Good night. Uh, Welcome back to my channel. I might be having some new viewers here. I'm not sure on that, but in that case, because I posted this video in some new groups. So, my name is Nicoline and I am going to talk about scapegoats, basically. And how us humans we like to point fingers at people, or I mean not even people, but just anything in general throughout different cultures, throughout different currents. Not it doesn't matter even if you're whether you're a Christian or a Satanist. People like to point fingers, and that's something I'm gonna be talking about basically. Hey Hombrecito, hi Andrew. So let me see if this is working well. Are you all hearing me and seeing me properly on this? Because I always have some trouble with that. I hope it's all working as it should. So glad to see you guys all here. In the meantime, I'm just gonna be adding some nice incense. And I'd like to kind of make it a little bit of a thing where I'm usually I'm always joined by spirits one way or another. So maybe just make it a bit of a theme that with every live stream there's another spirit here, I say. So tonight I'm making a little offering to Azazel, as he fits the subject quite well. Hey Spirit Walker, hey Ali, hi Ginny, hi Tisha. So I might get back to that later. I mean, I think some of you know why Azazel he's basically the scapegoat. Like the first, I think he's pretty much where the scapegoat comes from. In case. For just a short summary for the people who don't know, Azazel is he's a demon or like a fallen angel or something. Sorry, don't mean to disrespect him like that. I'm giving him a little blood offering as well. Oh hey Shelby, I didn't recognize you there. So basically, in Jewish or Hebrew tradition, people would have two goats each year for like it was this sort of festivity, and one goat would have all the good stuff and it would be sent to God basically, and the other goat would have all the sins, like represent all the sins of that tribe, I'd say, and that goat would be sent to Azazel. So basically, he is the scapegoat, or the scapegoat would be sent to him, and that's kind of where that whole idea comes from. Now, so yeah, that's kind of, one could say like he's a demon at that, like a typical demon stuff, but it's more like, I see it as he's providing a service. Give all the bad vibes to him so that he can, so that you don't have to deal with it. Or so that he can take that negative energy and put it to good use. Yeah, the peacock angel. I think that's someone else. Hey, Roy. Yeah, of course. I cannot leave. I can never leave Azazel out of that. I mean, and he's one of the spirits that is very close to me. So, you know, just gonna give him a little offering. I always like to offer some blood and some beer or whatever I have at hand. And just a little shout out to him. So yeah, um, might have a beer myself as well, just a little bit. Maybe you should all join in just Friday night beer drinking. Cheers, Azazel. I'm not having too much because this is some heavy beer. So, as some of you know, a while ago, I think about a year ago, I made a video about reptilians and archons and false light beings and how to recognize them and about what they do. And I feel the need to set something straight because I learned a few new things recently, and it just got me thinking. Is it, like, what are we doing? Always blaming someone else for our problems. So basically, even if you look at reptilians, I'm not sure if I'm able to summarize like the whole video that I did about them, but they are this different race of spiritual beings, I'd say, that are pretty much, I'd say they are like on a similar level as humanity, more or less. They're very technically advanced, though, but on a level of, I'd say, spiritual ascent. It's kind of like, yeah, maybe that's why there are clashes, because it's like siblings, or you know, like a little bit of competition, maybe. And the competition can be good because it forces you to, you know, work harder, maybe. But at some point, you also gotta get to the point that where you understand that war doesn't last forever, and just, you know, yeah, to get back to it, in that video I talked about how there's a war at hand, and there is, but and how reptilians are trying to keep us down and stuff like that. And some of them are, same as that, you know, some angels are pretty much doing the same things too. But that doesn't mean that they are to blame for everything that is wrong in this world. And just because a small group of these, it's not only them. I mean, we're doing it to ourselves too. Like our own negative vibes. Like this, it's not like, you know, basically, I came to the conclusion we all need someone to blame for our own shit. And I do it too. And I think it's a very human thing to do. In the same way, you know, that Satanists blame angels, or, you know, like it's always easy to blame others for your own mess. So to get back to these reptilians, so, yeah, I was blaming them for all that. You know, I was kind of getting into these conspiracy theory things a little, but yeah. And I'd say that, especially combined with archons and false light beings, I think they are probably one of the most hated species all throughout. Like, light workers hate them, New Age people hate them, Satanists hate them, occultists hate them. Like, yeah, and I wonder if that's even though they have committed, like, done a lot of terrible things, if that's the right way to go. And yes, there is, you know, reptilians and draconians. That's a little like a subspecies of that. You have to, I'd have to look back at the previous video for that, but because if I'm going to like repeat all that, it's going to be very long. It's going to take a very long time. But so even if they have been like together with the false light beings or the light beings or forces of the demiurge, I mean that's another part, of course. And even if they did have a hand, or some of them did have a hand in humanity staying down, like this prison of cosmic prison of false light, so to say. Even if they did have a hand in that, and even if some of them are our enemy and some of them do hate us, and I'm pretty sure they do, like there are parts of that group that really that hate us as much as we hate them. And I thought, like, yeah, but can you blame them? Because if you look at humanity and what we're doing, like, we're pretty much equally shit, you know, if you look at that. And if we look at ourselves, and we have a variety of, you know, some humans are still pretty low, you know, and still up to just fucking things up and wanting to destroy the planet and whatnot. And while other humans are thinking, you know, evolving. And the same counts for these reptilians. I'm using reptilians as a bit of an umbrella term here. We're basically coexisting, sort of equally moving with them. And if we're ascending, so are they. So that means that there are individuals that are probably ahead of us on a whole. And so that it's something that I would like to take back about the previous video that I made. I'm sorry if this is a little bit of a confusing story, because I'm not using any script whatsoever. I just felt like I have to set that straight. In my previous video on this subject, I made them look like, I mean, I was convinced that they were the big enemy and that all of them were evil, like they would kill you on sight, basically. Some of them will, some of them would, but you always have to look at the individual. And I think we've also been fed a lot of, like, I wouldn't say lies per se, but you know, that's why I get back to the scapegoat thing, is that even if a certain group of beings, be it reptilians or angels, or be it the demiurge, be it the government, even if they did screw up, even if they did do a few things to hurt you, that would hurt you or set you back, it doesn't mean they are responsible for everything that could possibly go wrong in our lives. And I think it's very important to always take matters into your own hands, take your own responsibility, instead of, you know, this human need to always blame others. And I wonder where that comes from. If it's only humans doing that, or maybe these reptilians are blaming us for their shit too, if that's a mutual thing. But I think, yeah, so that's, the Christians have the demons for that to blame stuff on, and I don't know, Satanists could be blaming Jesus, like he's their scapegoat, or the demiurge is their scapegoat. God is, and we're all doing it. And I think I wasn't even really that aware of it until recently, that, I was doing it too. Blaming archons and whatever for negative vibes and negative emotions, and yeah, you just have to look at your, even if they do, you like it, it's not like they're innocent, but yeah. Yeah, it's also like, this need for good and evil as well. It's a very human thing to do, but yeah, I wonder indeed if reptilians and draconians and other species that are sort of at the same level as we are, if they are also experiencing this whole good and evil stuff, and if they too are being manipulated. And that's another thing, like, it's if we truly want to ascend and move on all this negative stuff, these energetic vampires, basically, and I'm not blaming vampires right now, but these beings that feed on our low levels of energies, our bad vibes, our low emotions like fear and anger and stuff like that. It's not like, yeah, some of them can be reptilians, some of them can even be humans, it just, like, they exist, but they exist all throughout several species. They can be angels, they can be false light, archons, whatever. So where did I want to go with that? Losing my point. So yeah, it's they also feed on our hatred for each other, and this whole us versus them mentality, it's not gonna get you anywhere. That's what I think. Like, you gotta always be careful about this perpetual warmongering that we're all doing. And even if we talk like polarization and duality, it's necessary, that's for sure, because we got to move on. Like, you have polarizing energies, and polarizing energies are there to avoid stagnation, and polarizing energies sometimes clash. So that's kind of where all this good and evil, black and white, and all that sort of comes from. Is this necessity to move on, be it through war. But, wars don't last forever. And it's okay, I think it's okay to clash sometimes, but if you keep in mind that after war comes reconciliation, and just keep an open mind to that you can't stay mad and angry forever at this other side, Hey Nina! Greetings from the Netherlands. So this is kind of what I wanted to say. Yeah, Roy, it is very limiting, dualism. that's why I prefer to generally go for uh, polarity instead, because it adds in all sorts of, like, duality is just two, and polarity, like, it can go many ways, but it's just that sometimes these opposites, like the opposite side of a battery, sometimes it's something that clashes. You know, if you have a magnet, um, you know, the positive and the negative side of a magnet, if that's the right word to use, um, they clash, but at the same time they keep each other moving, and that is why um, these why polarization is there, why we need these extreme ends of a spectrum to keep moving as a whole, not just our own human species, but the whole universe. And this can happen. You know, this polarization can be on an individual level. It can be very very small, or on a universal level. And that's why I think part of this us versus them mentality comes from. So I understand that, you know, it's not like, it has to happen, but at some point it needs to stop. Or I think it's a part of evolving is to understand that this happens, and to understand that our enemies can, you know, they can be our mortal enemies at one point, and at some, you know, but not forever. They can be our best friends in the next stage of being, basically. And yeah, I think it's something important to keep that in mind, to keep an open mind to that. And all this whole thing, um, you know, people saying like, you're not a true Satanist if you work with angels whatsoever, uh, even questioning. I mean, I had my loyalty questioned because of the spirits I work with, and like, because I would allow Archangel Michael in, and you know, it's just very limiting. I mean, even if there was a war between angels and demons at some point, that doesn't mean it's gonna last forever. And yeah, there is a war between. I do personally believe there is a war between some reptilians, like they have their subsections too, you know, like the Drakonians, for instance, and um, humanity, perhaps some other species that are closer to humanity. And yes, a lot of reptilians hate humans, but not all of them. And um, just as we are getting enlightened, so are some of them. Where was I getting again? um, yeah, just, you know, it's you don't, like, right now. A year ago, I would say if you see a reptilian, just block, run, move away, you know. And but right now, I would say that if you encounter them, um, go for your gut feeling. Like, they might just be enlightened beings as well. You know, they might be further ascended than you, and be done with all this war, and just come in peace too. You know. So yeah. Let me see. There's a lot going on in the chat room. Sorry if I'm not always keeping up, because sometimes when I talk, and I just keep talking. Yeah, duality can be an illusion. It's also something. There are so many layers to all this because those forces that do want, and that's like a combined force. It's not only reptilians. It's not only the elites or not only the government. It's just a group of beings, like from several backgrounds, that have found it beneficial for us or for this planet to stay in the third dimension. And yeah, they would like us to keep thinking in terms of duality, because as long as we fight each other, no matter what race, as long as we don't see what we're doing, and we keep bickering and warmongering, that's a way to keep us down, because all this blaming each other, infighting, it produces angry energy, it produces fear, mostly, of course, and those are all low emotions that exude, is that the right word? Like, emanates negative vibes that have no place in dimensions that are higher up, like like the fourth dimension and upwards. Or maybe they do have some place, but not as much as they do here. So I think it's essential that we just see what's going on. You see, guys, I suck at multitasking. Very hard. I'm reading back a little bit what you guys have been talking about. Trying to keep this a little bit, interactive instead of a monologue. Yeah, Ginny, you're right. I don't think there's like black or white magic either. It's just whatever you make of it. Maybe it's more like a maybe it's more even more like a power term. Like, if someone feels more like feels more powerful saying something is white magic, like they're doing this, yeah, it could be more of a human thing. Like they feel more empowered using certain terms instead of just I don't know, just magic. I call it just doing something. I don't even do magic. Yeah, it doesn't, Rory talking about two ends of the same thing. It doesn't even have to be the same thing. It's just representing two opposites. So, yeah. Jack Sparrow. What do you have to be truly lost to be found? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'm kind of lost too right now. I just have to scroll back and forth a little bit to keep going. Can you imagine? I managed to get lost in my own live stream. So I'm sorry if I missed anything. Just trying to keep. I think I got. I think my settings are actually moving faster now. Yeah, I need to get used to that. I actually got a lot of people talking right now, but that's good. Feel free to join in, and I like it that I like that you guys are actually, you know, I like to keep this interactive and just have a conversation instead of me just babbling about. I said a few things that I wanted to say. I basically I wanted to apologize to these beings that I scapegoated because I see what I did there. And I see that now, and I wasn't aware of that a year ago, but now I am. And even though, I'm not perfect. I mean, sure, I'm probably gonna keep blaming others for shit that is my responsibility because I'm just human. But I make it a point of trying not to, or trying to see. This counts for your interactions with other people too. It's not just on a universal level, it's on a personal level too. You just gotta take responsibility for what you do. Hey Mercer, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm just still losing my voice a little bit to keep hydrated. So yeah, that's something uh, to think of as well. If you keep in mind that a lot of things that you don't like about others, like things that clash about, if you keep this whole polarity thing to, if you minimize it, minimize it to like a personal level between two people, um, sometimes um, the other side, the enemy, or your polar, the polarized version of you might say, um, they will hold a mirror for you, and you see in them everything that you don't like about yourself, everything about you that needs some polishing, or needs to be worked on. And this is basically, in that way, they're actually helping you. They're helping you grow. They're helping you evolve. So sometimes, yeah, it's sometimes when you're hating on someone, or you're having a big fight with someone, um, and you're blaming them for things, maybe you need to have a look at yourself and see if maybe the things that irritate you um, about them are things that you need to work on for yourself as well. Yeah, Andrew, it could be projecting stuff, but it could also be like, this person genuinely doing these things, but um, like they are just your mirror image. They are doing what you do, like the same things, and you get annoyed at them because it's something you have to change as well. Yeah, Ginny, that's another thing, of course. Sometimes people do things to you. Not even people. I mean, that's beings also. I mean, that's kind of something personal for me, uh, because I've been dealing with a lot of irrational fears, which is stupid. But I'm working on that, and it's easy to blame. Uh, it's easy to blame other beings for that, like beings that vampirize on your fears and stuff. But it is me who allows that to happen by um, allowing these fears in, or to not, well, okay, sometimes these things can come from an outside source, but you still have your own, your responsibility to do something about it or not. So yeah, allowing allowing people to do bad things to you is also kind of this is a very unpopular opinion probably, but we all have a part in it, basically. Yeah, that's great, Jenny. You know, if you're at the point where you realize what your enemies, who you perceive as your enemies, what they have taught you. You know, sometimes our closest soulmates can bring out the biggest problems in our lives if they incarnate. Like, because they have agreed to teach us some very, very hard lessons. That's, yeah, so sometimes, you know, our worst enemies can be our soulmates, just who made an agreement with us to teach, and we are teaching them. So, yeah. But so I think the same thing counts with this whole human reptilian relation. Maybe they're also kind of holding a mirror for us, and we're holding a mirror for them. Uh, yeah, something like that. It's and the same for whatever falls. I'm not sure about archons. I'm not ready to say that a being that calls themselves like be the beings that are in control. That's basically what the word archon means what's in control or controlling you. You know, I'm not ready to admit that. You know, that's a good thing, but I'm sure that even within that group, at some point they will start to see things differently, and when they do, I'd say that we should be ready to receive them, you know, with open arms, instead of always being negative and remaining negative forever and ever. So, yeah. Just, damn, got some water on me. Alright. Glad this is a black t-shirt, so. So, if you guys have any questions about Azazel in the meantime, anything to add about him? Kind of where he comes in as this scapegoat thing. It's kind of like he took it upon himself to just blame him for everything. It's also, but that's also the thing. Something I've been wondering about, something I've been thinking about is that maybe this veil that we're talking about, usually, the veil, the cosmic prison, whatever you'd like to call it, maybe it's not really much of a veil, but more like how this realm, our third dimension, physical realm, has become so partially dense, but also just not a place where beings that are further evolved want to be. This place has become so off-putting to basically any higher up beings, that especially those that are so far evolved that it's a hassle for them to descend to this level. And it's not really as much of a veil, but more like um, like an invisible wall. Just it's more like something that the frequencies are over here are so low that the environment here doesn't support those that are of a higher frequency anymore. So they can come in, like, or otherwise things are gonna explode, basically. And and of course, some of us that are, you know, on our way to moving upwards, we can meet these higher up beings at what people would call the crossroads, I would say, or meet them at a sort of halfway. And so maybe this whole veil thing, maybe it's not. It's part of it is our own doing. Like we're keeping it up. We're our own negativity is keeping it this way. Is keeping this place so that higher up beings cannot or do not want to be here, and if they do, we don't really have the system to support them, to support their high frequencies. So that's another thing, especially, well, both light workers and, let's say, Satanists, especially the anti-cosmic Satanists, they would like to, they seem to like to blame other beings for having installed this veil here. And I do believe that part of that is true, but we're the ones keeping it up. With our own warmongering, it's not helping. It's not helping. It's not helping to build an environment where the higher up beings, which could very well be demonic, talk about. Just take Kronos for instance. Maybe the beings that were banished from here. They were not particularly banished, probably. It's more like this place became an environment where they just cannot thrive anymore because we just sunk so low. And to have all these beings come back, if we want them to come back, we have to make this place an environment where these higher frequencies can be supported. And we're not doing that by spreading hatred of other beings and spreading fear, especially fear. Fear is like such a basic emotion, and fear is how the beings that want to keep us in third dimension, fear is how they keep us in control. Fear of other beings, fear of angels, fear of reptilians, fear of aliens, fear of other races of humans, and I think a lot of people deny that they fear them, but I think in a way hatred also comes from a fear of these other beings taking over your place. I think generally a lot of negative emotions stem from fear, and we're so manipulated to fear things. That's yeah, to fear spirits. I mean, look at horror movies. It's happening, right? And we're even celebrating it. you know, yeah, we're taught to fear ghosts at a very young age. And look where that gets us. It gets us to fearing interaction with spirits that could help us evolve instead. So, yeah. This sounds like a lecture. I hope you're still enjoying it. I see people are still watching at least. So, what beings like Azazel do, part of what he does, I've discussed it several times before, but I don't mind repeating it for the sake of this whole topic. Um, so Azazel, basically volunteering as a scapegoat. Um, what he does is take on these negative energies and make sure that at least they don't end up in the hands of those who like them a little bit too much. So I definitely advise working with him. He's helped me a great deal with getting over my own fears. I'm not entirely done, but you know, having him present and making sure that um, whenever I feel fear coming up and the the energy that radiates from that, he can take that. He can feed on that, and I'd rather have him feed on it than some low life scum that's trying to hold me down or something. And in the meantime, I am very, learning to be responsible for my own uh, emotions and that, learning to be responsible to not allow that fear in the first place. But in the meantime, yeah, there are beings feeding on that. You don't want, that I don't want to empower them. Good night, Nina. Thank you for joining in. I might have to call it a night too soon. But it's another thing that. Oh God, I'm knocking over my candle here. I had it just right, and then I start fiddling with it, and it knocks over. So another aspect of Azazel is Ares, which is the Greek war god. Probably mentioned that a few times, but I'm mentioning it again because basically, as Ares, he's also like. Oh, I actually remember reading a part of a book. I think it was Elias. Yeah, it was Elias, but it was kind of translated. It was translated for kids, and I remember opening up a passage of that book. It opened right on the page, where Ares was supposedly having a monologue about how he's the black goat of like the black sheep of the family, and he was kind of lamenting that, like, why do I always I don't want to be associated with violence all the time, and I'm not a bad guy. I just I'm a god of war, but it's a dirty job and someone has to do it. And that's when I knew, like, yeah, that is it's what Azazel does. You know, taking on the dirty stuff that no one wants. It's just better to have it in his hands than to have it in the hands of beings that are gonna abuse it. So yeah, that's the same. Yeah, with war. War is an ugly thing, of course. I mean, when I found out like he was basically a god of war, and since I'm very close with him, I felt a bit, you know, yeah. How do you justify that? And you know, all the atrocity of war. How can you actually like that? How can you be the god of that? And so that's kind of when I opened that book and came to that passage and realized that someone's got to do it. It's not that, and he might as well just start enjoying it, you know. But it doesn't mean that he is such a monster. It's just that we do these things. We do these ugly things. Like we are the ones sending child soldiers to the front, and you know he just gods like Azazel or Ares, they're just there to make it a little bit less worse, I suppose, like less bad, to make sure it's not getting worse than it already is. Not sure if you're talking about what Ginny, the two books that I'm not sure if that's the same topic. Alright, sorry, I'm getting back on the chat again, scrolling back. Do you think the idea that we should suffer alone has anything to do with what you're talking about? I just need to scroll back in my mind what I was talking about at that point. I don't think we need to suffer alone. That's probably... Maybe that's the idea that we need to suffer alone is something that is put in, like, maybe that seed got planted to actually have us avoid seeking help from others. There's, especially on the left-hand path, there seems to be, see, there you got this duality again, you know, left-hand path, right-hand path, doesn't matter. As long as, what matters is that you're doing it, basically, no matter what path you follow. But, you know, suffering alone, I mean, I'm convinced that everyone has a soul group, at least, or a soul family, and you don't suffer alone, you don't travel alone. That's my opinion. And the idea that you have to do it all alone is just another way to keep you disconnected. And to keep that, keep you disconnected from those who you should connect to. Because alone, on our own, we're weaker. Divide and control. Andrew, yeah, war is like modern day human sacrifices, but it's not modern day. I mean, war is something that's always been there. It's not something new. I mean, I'm talking about child soldiers, and people right now might think of like rebels in the African jungle, but it's not. I mean, back in the day, it was very usual for very young people to die in war. I mean, look at the Greeks, Egyptians, all of them had wars, and it's always this us versus them mentality that brings that. Ginny, yeah, you mean mourning, mourning, mourning versus suffering. Yeah, of course. If you want your privacy, that's another thing. But you're not obliged uh, to do it alone. Like you can choose to do it alone, but you don't have to. Hey, Avalon. Yeah, you made it. I think it's also. I'm gonna say something that might piss people off, but so be it. Azazel, as Azazel, he is very associated with sexual energy. But I think part of this is also, um, as I discussed a while ago, there's a difference between lust and um, divine sexuality. Like there's lower levels of lust, and there's divine sexuality. Like not even tantra, but even higher up than that, maybe. Like the connection between soulmates and making love. You know, so I'd say lust can be a very low level um, emotion if it's I gotta choose my words carefully here. But I think that's kind of what might be the reason why Azazel is so associated with lust, is because he can um, filter out the things that make it a low frequency thing. Yeah, I wouldn't say low level, but like a lower frequency. Lust is a very something very, I'd say, animalistic, almost, and it's not that he encourages it per se, but it's more like he's very good at taking in the negative parts of that. So yeah, but at the same time, he probably does encourage to get it out of your system. So same counts with anger. Just get it out and give it to Azazel. Basically, that's what he's very good at. Yeah, there is not much more intimate than like real soul connections. It's I count myself lucky to know that sort of connections. But yeah, I think sometimes if we maybe I'm sort of getting things as I talk, that's something that happens sometimes. Sometimes I talk about a certain subject and it just comes sort of flowing in. So what I'm getting, hi Dimona, by the way, sorry, didn't see you earlier. But yeah, the negative part, because as I was saying, talking about lust, I was thinking like, what damage does that really do, as long as it's consensual? But about lust is that, in what way does it affect us negatively, or what sort of in what way is it a low frequency thing? Is that it sort of blocks you from, or this kind of sort of disables you from experiencing the real, or it's a distraction in a sense. It's like a distraction from experiencing um, real um, divine sexuality instead. I'm not sure how exactly that works, but it's just kind of like an information download going on. So I think it's kind of starting. Yeah, I already lost my connection once there. As you can see, it's about time to start wrapping it up because I've been talking for almost an hour now, and it's early morning here. I hope you guys understood this whole messy thing, but at least I got it out there. Like, wanted to say, like, there were a few things I wanted to say, wanted to set it straight. It's I've been part of. I had a like yeah. I have been demonizing beings as well, like openly with my video from last year, blaming them for stuff that some of them did, but not all of them. So that's kind of the summary, the gist of this video. I wanted to set that straight. So in conclusion, I'm going to get back to what I said like maybe 2 years ago, like no more spiritual discrimination. That's always keep an open mind. Yes, there are beings that are like in general, like their kind is at war with us. But if you look at humans, for instance, like two nations can be at war, but that doesn't mean that every person of one nation hates every person of that other nation, and that you're always going to clash forever. And also when it comes to angels and demons, yeah, there may have been a clash at some point, but that doesn't mean that there is a clash right now, because after war comes reconciliation. There's always a point of peace somewhere, and all these biblical events and stuff, that was very long ago. So just keep an open mind and try to keep your own vibrations high, and make this help make Earth a place where ascended beings would like to visit again. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight to everyone, and thanks for watching, and thanks for taking part in this. So I really enjoyed this live chat like that, and hope to see you guys next time. So good night.